Aloha, my friends and family, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Embodied Healing Self. So, it is my deepest honor to share with you a wonderful guest this week, whom I've been following for a couple of years and absolutely love the work that he does. He, in my opinion, is a wonderful teacher, spiritual leader, and an amazing space holder for transformation. I have with me today Xavier Dagba. So, did I say that right?
You,
Close
you, you,
enough.
you. Close enough. Let's give you that. But yeah, I would like to say it's an honor. It's a pleasure to be here. I thank you for your kind words and just holding the intent that this exchange, this conversation reaches the hearts that it's meant to reach. And I'm excited to be here.
Oh, thank you for that lovely introduction. You know, I'm so grateful. I think that I first reached out to you last spring, and then we both had changes within our home. And I'm just so grateful that we've finally been able to create the space for this conversation. And one of the things that I love about you is that you do have a way of keeping humor in
Yeah.
the spiritual growth process. So I knew that I could say your name not the right way and you'd still be okay with it. I'm working on my
Um,
French accent.
Absolutely. I think, what we're working with when it comes to personal transformation, I think it's really serious. And at the same time, I think we take it a whole lot, maybe a little bit too seriously. Um, so that's really one of my dear perspectives. And honestly, a good sense of humor can be a great antidepressant. So I really love staying connected to that.
Well, I love that you bring that in because we do get to choose. Spiritual growth does have its discomforts in it. We can also choose to show up in joy in that. And so that leads me to where I really want to begin this conversation is a lot of the work that you do. You call yourself an emotional alchemist and you create space to invite people in to do shadow work. And what I love that you say that I'm also aligned with is that shadow work, if that's what we call it, is really the invitation to fully embrace ourselves in our wholeness. And I love that because even just as you shared, spiritual work can be serious and it can also be fun. And I think that there's a lot of stigmas around the idea of healing, that it's really uncomfortable and it's a painful process and that we have to be in suffering. When in fact, a lot of what you've been sharing lately is that we don't have to be in suffering. And so as I'm speaking this, my first question is, as I'm hearing myself speak, it's like, how? So if I am buying into the fact that I believe shadow work is a part of my personal transformation so that I can fully integrate myself as a whole being. And we may dive a little deeper into that in this conversation. How do I choose to navigate that as a human being without feeling trapped in cycles of what appear to be cycles of suffering?
Mhm. That's that's a big question. So I hope I am able to break it down. First, how about we start with the definition of shadow work? And I love the way you put it, which is, embracing your wholeness, really embracing your wholeness, and also embracing all of that you are, especially the part that it was never safe to really embody, especially the parts um that you had to disown in order to feel safe, and even the power you couldn't express. Um, One of the biggest misconceptions about shadow work is that it's a very dreadful, challenging, painful, scary process, and it can be. It can be. But it's not just about ruminating or darkness. It's also about embracing parts that it was never it was never fully safe to really embrace. So I really want to portray shadow work that way, which is a journey of consciousness where we embrace all that you are, where we learn to be intimate with all that you are as best we can. So is it a journey that will ever be done, fully done in a lifetime? I don't think so, because as long as we're human, we must have a shadow. This is my perspective. The only way, in my opinion, not to have a shadow would be to go back fully to the light that you are in essence. But as long as you choose to remain in this human body, go through this human experience, because growth must happen, because growth and expansion is actually part of the purpose of being here. It means we still need to have blind spots. So the first invitation would be for people not to engage in shadow work thinking, I'm going to do 2 years of shadow work and then I'm going to be done for the rest of my life. Or I'm going to do it for 3 months and then boom, I'm done. Away with this shit. I'm done with this, all of that, done. It's one of the things that really humbled me in the journey is the understanding of the journey itself, which is okay, it's a continual process. It's as if it's a spiral that is expanding and it keeps expanding and it expands and it expands and it expands. So that's the first kind of context that I would like to give. And of course, when we dive in the shadow, when we start doing some healing work, we happen to uncover pain. Pain we didn't know how to process, pain we didn't know how to feel, pain we didn't know how to heal. What I would like to say is there is a huge difference between pain and suffering, a big difference. One of my teachers defined suffering as the dramatization of pain. When we create a huge attachment with pain, we begin to anchor what is called suffering. And it may sound really, really weird for some people listening. It is possible to navigate pain with grace. What do I mean by that? Is without attaching a huge degree of resistance to the experience. I'm going to give an example. Suppose that you are going through, you are in a, suppose that you are sliding in a tunnel and the tunnel is really going down. You can try to hold, let's say it's a really narrow tunnel. Probably your hands can touch the sides. And the experience of going through that tunnel is challenging. It's scary. So let's even say that fear is let's label that fear, the discomfort of going through that. Let's label that pain. It is scary to go down through a tunnel and you don't know where you're going to land. Let's actually suppose you go through that tunnel and on the other side, there's the ocean. You are going through a narrow tunnel and it's really fast on the other side, you're the ocean. If you choose to hold on to the sides, this rocky tunnel, you're going to blister your hands, you're going to hurt yourself, you're going to have some scars, I don't know, you're going to wound yourself. But if you choose to actually let go of trying to hold on to the sides and you allow yourself to just descend,
Mm.
the journey will still be this uncomfortable, but you're not going to have the blisters on your hands, meaning you are not suffering. Yes, it is painful, but you are not consciously or unconsciously, because it can also be very unconscious. Suffering sometimes for most people is actually unconscious. You are not actually dramatizing the amount of pain that you're exposing yourself to. So I really want to give this perspective, which is pain is a real thing when it comes to transformation to healing. Discomfort is a real thing. And you can gracefully enter the pain, learn how to emerge from the pain, experience and witness it. And at the same time, find that tune into a newfound capacity to actually emerge from that pain. So I truly think we are entering the paradigm of grace when it comes to transformation, meaning Yes, it can be challenging at times, but it doesn't need to be a dreadful, soft life. It doesn't need to be filled with dread every step of the way. And this is really a perspective that I hope people are able to grasp.
Yeah, I love that. In fact, thank you for sharing all of that. One of the tools that you invite us to lean into is witnessing and observing ourselves
Yeah,
in the story that created the painful experience rather than being consumed by the experience, which is energetically more in the energy of attachment. And so, and I am also hearing you say that it's a practice, like we get to show up and practice as we continue to walk this path of expansion, which is growth. And growth is leaning into a stretch, which feels uncomfortable. That as we continue to practice this, one of the things that we can choose to do and show up is to the commitment of witnessing and observing the painful expression of the story itself. And
absolutely.
so, yeah, so it's people are listening right now and thinking, well, that sounds a lot easier said than done. And I'm wondering if you would be willing to share what's available. What's waiting for us on the other side of the willingness to take that courage to lean into that part of us that we perceive is disconnected,
Mhm,
because the shadow, when we fully integrate the shadow work, we realize that we're whole, that we were never disconnected.
mhm.
So when we lean into this, take the courage to lean into this, I mean, you've become a teacher of this. So you have a passion and a reason why you love to teach this. What's How do you encourage somebody to step into this? What's on the other side of it? What's the feeling or sensation? I know it's different for everybody, but why would we want to do this?
One of the biggest reasons is first a stronger feeling of self-mastery. I'm going to give you an example. Um, the most obvious example is navigating reactivity, navigating triggers, navigating situations that are very, very challenging. And let's just take a workplace example. You have that person at work that knows how to push your buttons in ways that you don't even understand. Like every single time. And this is an example. Every single time you hear that person say something with the tone of voice that they are using, you just feel activated, not really knowing what is happening. Now, reactivity is acting again, meaning the person that you are witnessing right now touched on an energy within you that wasn't fully um, processed, expressed, integrated. So very often we can happen to be reactive. And sometimes our reactivity can be very costly. In the workplace, your reactivity can cost your job. In the workplace, your reactivity, for an entrepreneur, your reactivity can cause your client. If you're not able to really work around their energy, it can cause you it can have a real cost because if people feel, wow, this person is just extremely reactive for some reason. I don't know what I've done, but this person just keeps being passive aggressive when I'm talking to them. And I don't really find that I can really connect with this person. So it has a real impact. Now, am I saying that you will get to a place in your life where you never get triggered? No. But there's an unconscious choice that happens when we get into a place where we happen to feel reactive because of what we saw, because of the way someone else is showing up, because of the circumstance. There is an unconscious choice to become consumed by your reactive self. And what that reactive self is actually a way you learn how to show up in specific situations. Maybe it's becoming angry or shutting down or becoming aggressive or even passive aggressive, feeling like you're being attacked Whereas it may not necessarily be the case. We all have our own reactivity, and we all have the ways we show up in these situations. Now, here's the really interesting part. Your reactivity is the shadow raising its hand, being like, hey, there's a part here that is ripe for integration. I need your attention. That is what reactivity is to me. The shadow raising its hand. Hey, look over here. There's something that is unprocessed here that is ready to be worked through. So we don't even need to chase shadows. We don't need to chase it. They show up. They show up all over the place. They show up. They're like, hey, remember me? Remember me when you were a kid, you couldn't express me, but right now you need me because this person is showing up in your life the same way. This person, this other guy who bullied you at school showed up the same way. Mom showed up when she was angry. The same tone of voice that dad had when he was in a bad mood. So you feeling frozen, you don't really know what's happening. Remember me? So now it's time for you to actually go back in, to actually begin to romance what is going on within me, to actually take some time to, um, of course, when you have the capacity, it's not necessarily in the middle of an interaction, but just going back in, like asking to your body, tell me what was going on, give me some sort of sensation, what was actually going on, give me some feedback, what was happening, and you learn how to relate to the reactive self, not from the reactive self, which is a big distinction. When you relate from the reactive self you consumed, when you are able to relate to the reactivity, you stand in this beautiful place in between where you are aware of the inner environment. And at the same time, you are still available to make a new choice in the now moment. And this is a big, big part. And it makes room for self mastery, really. And a big part of this work is getting to a place where you are not constantly hijacked by your reactivity, by parts of you that were suppressed, where you are able to co-create from the now moment. In my opinion, that is actually the biggest takeaway, which is reclaiming that self-mastery, in my opinion.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that you shared that. And as you were sharing that, I'm noticing we started our conversation by saying that it's the attachment to the pain that causes the suffering. So, in that space of witnessing, it's just a different energy. We're no longer attached or being consumed by that experience.
Yeah.
You talk a lot about leading our life through our heart and not our wounds.
Yeah.
And you hold the space for people to go into wounds and shadow work so that it can be transmuted
Yeah.
into the integration of whole self. What does that, as I say that, what does that mean to you, leading life from our heart and not our wounds? And how do you yourself practice that every day?
I love the question. I love the question on many different levels, one of the examples of living your life through a wound would be one person is showing up in your life. Let's say the same example on the workplace. You have this person that just triggers you left, right, and center. And this person tends to show some attributes that cause you a huge amount of pain growing up. Let's say this person displays the same kind of attributes that one of your caregivers had, and that you needed to suppress a part of you to cope with that kind of energy. If you happen to be reactive in that moment, then you are showing up, it's actually the wounded self or the reactive self or the protection mechanism that you learned how to create through your journey. This is what is leading the interaction. You may not necessarily have access to your resonance in this now moment. When we are in these places where, consumed by our old pain, old wounding. It's as if we have our access to our intuition and to our resonance shut down. What do I mean by resonance here? I truly mean there is a magnetic resonance. The language of the heart is actually resonant to me. It's like, whoo, I feel possibility for expansion through this. I feel my heart connecting to this possibility, to this potential. I feel that this is the right place for me to be in. I feel like this is the right channel. This is the right path. I feel this kind of full body kind of in alignment with what I am hearing, what I'm seeing. Um, this, in my opinion, is the language of the heart. There is some deep seated wisdom in there that is just waiting to be harnessed. But when we are trapped in our reactivity, in our old wounding, that voice gets shut down because the body is going back to a place of hypervigilance. We go back to a place of high stress. We go back to a place where the voice of the heart is really just numb. So um, the whole intention of leading your life from your heart, not your wound, is getting to this place where you have created enough intimacy with your wounds so that you can heal them and really welcome again these wounded parts in your heart. Learning how to love these parts of you that people that were meant to love you growing up couldn't love.
Mhm.
Loving the parts of you that you had to repress in order to receive mom's approval, dad's approval, in order not to have love withdrawn from you. The more you learn how to love these parts, the more you feed yourself the love that only you can give, the more that healing occurs, the more that integration occurs, the more you have access to the potency of your heart. And you can actually begin to tune into your real resonance. You can live from that place of being the observer. And that observer within you is not just a silent witness. It is the part of you that has access to the potency of your heart. It's a part of you that has access to refined willpower. What do I mean by refined willpower? Um, it's a willpower that is not tainted by your fears. It's a willpower that is driven by the potential that you are able to tune into. And it's the observer within you is a part of you that is also capable of seeing through the illusion that we put on ourselves, our own rationalization, the way we rationalize our limitations, our own denial, our own disbelief. When you tune into the frequency of that observer within you, you begin to see ways you are quote unquote bullshitting yourself. And it becomes less and less tolerable to live from that place. So I can that's what's coming up for now, but if you have more questions, I
Yeah,
can expand on it.
thank you so much for saying that. First of all, the thing that comes up for me is that heart resonance. I thought to myself, what does that mean and what does that need? It requires trust. And then as you kept speaking, I was reflecting on something that came through for me the other day, which was around trust and integrity and truth, and noticing that we can show up, we can be the most honest person in the world, but are we being honest with ourselves? We can be the most trustworthy person in the world, but are we being true to ourselves? We can say that we value integrity, but are we really living in integrity with our truth? And as you're talking about fears and trust, I've been noticing that on a collective level, we're really being invited to lean into clarity about what is my personal truth. Sovereignty is a word that comes through for me around that. And you know what, I'm curious, what is the energy coming through for you right now in the collective? Before we got on the call, one of the things I shared with you is that I'm in the inner alchemy circle, and every month, whatever it is that your theme is exactly where I am. So whatever collective energy is coming through, somehow I'm in that circle as well. And the theme for this month is around trust, which is where my energy is really resonating, as well as many of the women that I'm leading. And it's really what I'm witnessing is we're shifting from the perceived beliefs around fear and scarcity and being invited to lean into trust. I'm wondering how it's coming through for you and what you're experiencing as the collective shift that we're in right now.
I love this question because, we've been navigating times of huge collective turmoil, and it's really, really thick energy to navigate. That's how it feels to me. It's really thick energy to navigate. It's like the horizon is blurry. It's like it's hard to see where you are actually going. And here are a few things. I'm gonna give a few themes first, and I'll do the best I can to bring them together. When you look at when you tune into what is happening on the outside, there is a lot of fear, a lot of separation, a lot of divide, a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, a lot of people not knowing what to trust anymore on the outside, a lot of uncertainty, a huge amount of uncertainty. Like, what are things going to look like in a week or in 2 weeks? It's hard to tell, it's hard to predict. A huge amount of distrust with the information that we consume, the information that we being fed, just a huge amount of like uncertainty, a huge amount of fear, a huge amount of, a lot of anxiety, a lot, a huge part of what has been happening over the last 2 years plus or more has been that. And it really doesn't matter where you stand on some of these collective issues that we've been having. It really doesn't matter. I think we can agree on the fact that the energy has been dense at the
Mhm.
very least, very, very dense. And at the same time, things are changing quickly, so quickly, rapidly. It's as if the rug won't stop getting pulled from under our feet. It's like, okay, I think I can stand here, and boom, something else happening. All right, let me take my breath. I think I can stand now, and boom, something else happens. And this is if you allow yourself to be led by the external circumstances. Here is what I've seen from working with the collective unconscious. There is always, and that's a very strong word, there is always a higher purpose to every single collective energy that we experience. Sometimes the higher purpose is for you to learn how to regulate yourself within that energy, for you to learn how to remain connected to your own heart, to your soul within that energy, for you to identify what the seed of that energy may look like within yourself, and to integrate that, and also to do the work to open your heart again, connect with your resonance again, and connect with your spirit again. So that at the very least would be the invitation of every single thing. So let's take uncertainty, massive uncertainty. What is it inviting you to connect to? The highest invitation of uncertainty, in my opinion, is to be even more here in the now moment, because we've never been
Mhm.
meant to be oracles or to predict the future. The highest invitation of uncertainty, there is one of my teachers that often calls it, tell me what the divine mandate of uncertainty. It's like we navigate this world of mandates. What is the mandate of God when you navigate uncertainty? Be here. Sometimes even learn how to be still. It doesn't mean do nothing. It's like internally, find your own stillness internally. That's what being still means. What is the highest purpose of navigating deep fear? It's again, not letting that fear have the power to close your heart. to disconnect you from your resonance, allowing yourself to witness the fear and still hold firmly the hand of your own spirit. So we use the word trust. What is the invitation when you find out, oh my God, I can't really trust what I'm seeing to lead me. I can't really trust everything that I'm being fed or consumed at the moment. I realize things keep on changing and keep on changing and keep on changing. What used to be true yesterday is not true today. What is true today probably won't be true by tonight. Or, so it's like I can't trust the external the way I used to. So, what is the highest purpose? Learn how to trust your gut,
Mhm.
your intuition,
Mhm.
your knowingness. Learn how to work with your own inner compass and to reestablish intimacy with your inner compass. Learn how to trust your own energy, your own signature. Learn how to
Mhm.
rebuild trust with yourself to actually pick yourself back up. All the parts of you that were just like, no, I can't, I just can't trust this aspect of me, or this. I can't feel like I don't feel like I can trust myself in this area of my life. Actually dive in there again and learn how to clean up your act and to meet the part of you that needs a reconciliation with you in there. So I like to look at it as the highest potential in every single collective thing. And right now we are witnessing, potentials of war in Europe, Russia, Ukraine. What is the highest purpose here? Is it possible that to a certain degree you haven't fully embraced the concept of inner peace?
Mhm.
There is always a higher purpose. And when we learn how to embrace the higher purpose, the collective must adjust to meet the energy of every single individual human being. In my opinion, this is how transformation, evolution, collectively happens.
I love that so much. One of the things that I learned from you along the way is, as I was navigating something challenging myself, is just that opportunity to notice, like, what are the experiences that I'm navigating. So is it rejection or betrayal or fear or abandonment, and then asking the question, where in my life have I abandoned self or rejected or um, not, as far as scarcity, maybe not leaned into or avoided. And so I always, what I'm hearing you say is it's the invitation to just, like, we can't change what's happening in the world, but we do get to choose to show up for our own inner transformation, which then begins to radiate out into the collective. And
Could I add a little bit
yes.
more to this? I would like to say, um, trying to change what is happening in the world from a push and pull energy, meaning, um, let me see the right words to word it. Trying to change what is happening in the world from a disempowered place does not work, in my opinion. It does not work. I haven't seen it work. Trying to shift something that is happening collectively from a place of being completely disempowered does not work. Igniting the inner change that is required, in my opinion, is the first step. Ste- ex- Stepping out of the paradigm of push and pull that the collective is showing, and now that newfound awareness, that new consciousness that you're directing at the issue, if the issue is even still valid for you at that moment. I'm going to take an example here because, to just ground this. Let's say you are witnessing a lot of uncertainty and you're just feeling like, holy shit, there is anxiety coming up within you. You don't know how to relate to your world anymore. then you lean within yourself, and then you step into a place of first relating to the anxious part, meeting that anxious part with compassion, grounding safety within yourself, and also looking at all the different potentials that are causing inner turmoil and creating some degree of acceptance with all these different potentials, knowing there is a force within me that outlives everything here. There is a force within me that will outlive every single one of these potentials, and I'm choosing consciously. Not only I will relate to the part of me that is feeling anxious with more compassion, and I choose to create a bridge with that force within me that outlives everything that is causing me fear in this now moment. I choose to open my heart to welcome all of it, both in this moment. When you happen to relate to the uncertainty that is present in your life from this new empowered place, your signature is actually creating the change. The way you relate to people that are causing you to that used to cause you to feel anxious changes, because you know that they do not have the power anymore to sever that connection to your soul. And even if they can happen to do that for a while, you are now aware of a blueprint to reconnect. So there is just one thing we can't. Um, can we change what is happening in the world? I'm an optimist, so I'll like,
Mm,
part of me is saying absolutely yes, but that change can only happen first from the inside.
mm,
Because when we connect to this place inside of us, we open this door of potential that the heart is. We can actually begin to tap into transcending ideas. And this is what the world needs in this
mm,
moment. We need people that can happen to think beyond what thinking has been for a while. And these transcending ideas that we can begin to bring in our reality. The example of one person that lost their job because of the pandemic. You happen to dive in. Why am I here again? How come this job and this lockdown and this pandemic and all of this had so much power over me? How come it creates all of this anxiety within me? What did I want again to do when I was a child that I just forgot and disowned? I've seen people create beautiful transform.
mm.
I've seen people right now who are in a place where they would never want to go back to where they used to be prior to the whole chaos that we've seen in the last 2 years. So
Mm.
when we do this work, we can actually happen to tap into transcendental transcendental thinking. And in my opinion, we need a lot more of that.
Well, thank you for that clarity. I noticed that we both believe that the change begins with the inner work,
Yeah.
and I'm choosing the empowering belief that that is enough to create the ripple effect that can actually create change in the world. So I
Yes.
appreciate you bringing clarity to that. And I want to shift the conversation um, just a little bit from the place of trust and what I'm noticing currently, sort of the other side
Yeah.
of what it might be possible should we choose to lean into this trust, just based on what I've personally been downloading a lot of lately and witnessing in my own circles, is that what's available to us, this shift that I'm experiencing right now, what I'm witnessing, is that those of us that are choosing to take like the next step in front of the other, choosing to lean into that trust, witness the fears, the doubts, the scarcity, the shadow work, and we're choosing to continue to shift from the inside out, taking that next step, bringing our brothers and sisters with us who are willing to be on that journey with us, just collectively moving forward. What I'm really noticing, and I'm wondering how this is showing up for you, is there's this huge invitation for those of us in this collective energy to really receive, receive what's coming through for me is like prosperity consciousness.
Mhm.
So it's the idea of like abundance, but as you shared, in an energy of like life force. So it's not just financial, although that is a piece of it because money is energy as well, but it's nutrients, it's love, it's intimacy, it's trust, and choosing to receive it rather than, we talked about that push and pull that was kind of an old paradigm that we thought we had to do to have those things, really shifting into that energy of receiving and flourishing and nourishing and giving and receiving. I'm just curious, is any of that coming through for you? Are you witnessing any of that? And how is that showing up for you?
I love the way you are bringing this up, and the receiving and the stepping out of the push and pull. There is one big word that has been massive. Actually two, maybe three, maybe three. Um, the first one is grace.
Mm,
It can unfold
yeah.
with grace. It can unfold. It can all unfold with grace, transformation and healing, and um expansion on all the different layers, even meeting the darkest shadows, all of that can unfold with grace. And I have a teacher that says grace, in her opinion, is one of the highest expressions of power, meaning there is no abrupt force and taking and forcing things, even in the most difficult situations, it is possible to embrace the energy of grace. That is the first word. And grace in receiving, it is honestly, it feels elegant. And it doesn't mean that you just sit back and, just let things collapse or let things happen. It doesn't mean that this owning of responsibility, because very often when we misunderstand some spiritual principles, we just think, I just need to visualize and sit down and sit back and let all of this happen. If you're a great master, honestly, it may happen that way. But very often, even for someone that is highly in tune, there is some degree of igniting momentum. There is some degree of taking action. And even that can happen with grace. And the other word that has been coming up strongly for me is surrender.
That was just coming to me.
And what do I mean by surrender here? It is the place where the will of the self meets the will of the soul, meaning there's a merge here. It's actually where co-creation begins, conscious co-creation,
Mm.
not unconscious one. We are always co-creating, but surrender is actually when conscious co-creation happens. The conscious will of the self meeting the will of the soul, meaning I accept the assignment. I accept why I chose to show up here. And I am giving permission to my soul to become a real partner in co-creation, a very conscious one. I am willing to listen and I'm willing to surrender when it's needed. So that surrender amplifies grace, in my opinion. And the energy underlying all of this, which is actually the third word, and I consider this word as the catalyst. And that's the reason why I put it at the third position. It is in my opinion, compassion, and I've said it before, it is the catalyst, it is the bridge. It is going to be very hard to surrender to anything or to embrace grace if you can't be compassionate with yourself. It's going to be really hard to be in a situation where somebody can happen to say something very triggering and to embody grace if you are not compassionate. If you're not compassionate, you may attack back or you may shut down and let yourself be, I don't know, walked over, if I'm going to use that terminology. Without compassion, healing gets really, really challenging. And without that seed of compassion, it's really hard to reconcile with yourself. It's really hard to rebuild trust. It's really hard to look at, things that you would consider as failures in the past and look at yourself in the mirror and say, you know what? I'll- you're off the hook. I'm tired. I'm tired of blaming you or holding it against you. I am really tired. I know now that what we knew then wasn't enough to get us to navigate this situation gracefully. And I am tired of holding it against you. You're off the hook. I forgive you. Let's move on. Let's rebuild trust. Without that energy of compassion, it's really hard to access forgiveness. And forgiveness is when you actually clear your slate and bring all of your energy back in the now moment so that you may create more gracefully. So, what you're mentioning, which is receiving, I've been feeling that powerfully, really powerfully over the last, over the, it has been stronger at the very least since July 2021.
Mm,
Just getting into a place of aligning with that energy a lot, with even more strength and with even more conviction.
mm. Yes. And wow. Yeah, I really resonated when you said, you're off the hook. Like, I'm tired. It's okay. And I feel like that invitation is what brings us full circle from where we started around the shadow work, is like, is that's what it comes down to, is just the surrender and the acceptance of all of the experiences, the challenges that we learned and grew from, that brought us to where we are today. And looking forward, although we're in the practice of being present, and looking, I feel like, in order to take that next step, from my perspective, there's just this huge invitation to constantly lean into trust. And every time I notice myself in my story, I'm making it about me. And every time I'm leaning into trust, I'm leaning into something greater than me. And so it's really just a way that we get to practice shedding the ego of whatever story brought us to where we are. And I feel like there's a very loud invitation, at least that's how it's showing up for me, to share the message for other light-minded people who are in this frequency of consciousness, wanting to show up and willing to do the inner work, having the courage to lean into the discomfort, bring people with them, witness, see, heard, be supported in this space. I feel like there's a really loud invitation for us to even have a little bit more courage in the trust, where we continue to speak our truth, we continue to share without attachment. And then also, it takes courage and vulnerability to receive. For many of us, I think, especially, at least I work with mostly women, it's, if it's all sacral chakra, which a lot of it is abundance, receiving, even joy is a lot, and creativity in the sacral, it can feel vulnerable to really open up to receive that life force energy, that I'm using the word is prosperity, to then flow through us, which is the energy of grace. And as we bring this conversation to a close, because I want to be in integrity with time, I feel like we could talk all day. Or I could just listen. I could listen to your words of wisdom all day. For those who are listening, there are so many little nuggets of wisdom that resonated with wherever they are in their journey. It might be the invitation to have the courage to lean into the old story or the old pattern, to have the courage to live their life from their heart, not the stories, the wounds, the saboteurs. It might be the invitation to lean into trust, to lean into receiving, to really own our embodied truth, so that we can create that shift that you helped me create a shift in a belief just in this conversation that what we do does matter and it does create a ripple effect in the world. For everybody who's listening right now with what's current with you, with the energy shift that we're in, what would you say to the listeners? What is a nugget of wisdom that's coming through for you right now? What do you want to leave them with around this conversation today?
I appreciate the way you wrap the whole
No.
interaction and the, yeah, just the way you wrapped it with your own energy. I really find it beautiful. What is present for me at the moment is we are always in a state of trust. Always. We're always trusting. Now there's a difference. Sometimes we're trusting our fears and our limitations, or we are trusting our power and our light. We are always in a space of trust. And it is a very unconscious choice that we are making. So when people tell me I don't trust myself, I'm like, no, you trust yourself. You just trust your shadows more. You trust your limitations more. You trust that you won't be able to do this. You trust that you're gonna give up on yourself. That's what you trust. Are you willing to own that this is the choice that you've made? Because we are always in a space of trust. We must. We must. Now, here is where bravery is needed. Consciously choosing to shift our trust from our fears to our power. This is where the transformation happens. Consciously choosing to shift our trust. I choose to nurture the trust that I have with my power. I choose to nurture the trust that I have with my ability to stay consistent on this new pattern. I choose to nurture. This is where I'm investing my trust from now on. It becomes a conscious decision. Like, yes, I am aware that I've done this. I am aware that maybe my brain is even defaulting to this. And this is where I choose to build and to invest that trust from now on. This is where bravery happens because we are always in a place of trusting. And you can look at a place in your life, an area of your life that seems to be off, and ask yourself, what am I trusting here? Tell me what I'm trusting. As if you're speaking to yourself and your shadow is going to speak. It's like, well, you trust that you don't know how to handle money, for example. You trust that even if you had money, you wouldn't know what to do with it, that you would just spend it. This is what you're trusting. Are you able to first find compassion with it, accept it? Just there is always revelation when we work, when we do transformational work. And that revelation can happen to be hard, heartbreaking when you realize, oh wow, this is how I have invested my own trust. And of course, it was very unconscious to a certain degree. But now that I'm aware of it, how do I choose? How do I choose to invest it? So we are always in a place of trusting. Now, getting clear on what you are actually trusting is going to awaken you to how you've been investing that energy and gives you permission to make a new choice. So this is what I would like to leave people with. Just observing these areas of your life where you feel like things have been off and asking yourself, what have I been trusting here? What have I been trusting? And how can I invest my trust in something else? What else would I like to be investing my trust into? And you start seeing the word trust like a real trust. It's like financial trust. It becomes a real life force investment. So that's what I would like to leave people with.
I love that. That's the perfect place to complete this conversation. It's like, what am I choosing to believe? Because what I'm choosing to believe is my life experience, and just being super clear on how that's showing up. So thank you so much for your time and your wisdom. And before we go, would you be willing to just share how and where people can find you? And I know that I believe you have 3 different ways that you work with people, but just either share where they can find you on social media or invite an invitation for them just to lean into the kind of work that you do.
Thank you for the opportunity. People can find me on my website, xavierdagba.com, and all my offerings are there. And if you would like to find me on social, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, I am on all these platforms. You just look for my name, Xavier Dagba, and you're gonna find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the space that we held together for this conversation today. Thank you so much for being here.
My
And
ultimate pleasure.
thank you.